Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Well, it's that time of year again, and no, not Christmas. It's the yearly replacement of my V-band clamp on my passenger side collector. If you've been watching my other videos, you know I'm running these eBay knockoff long tube headers, which hang ridiculously low, as you can see from where the frame rail is to where the header actually ends up. So from time to time, the flange here scrapes and eventually it starts leaking and I have to put a new flange on it. Now the way I had this set up before, I had those band exhaust clamps that just wraps around the pipe and like seals it up. But I was having a lot of exhaust leaks with that, so I didn't want to keep that. It sounded awful. I hate the sound of exhaust leaks, and that's all I could hear when I had those clamps on here. So I ended up cutting I got rid of those, and I welded on a V-band clamp on each header. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with what a V-band clamp is, so basically a V-band clamp it's mostly used on a lot of turbo cars. Like the flange on the turbo would be this, or the downpipe coming off the turbo. And what it is basically just two flanges here. So this gets welded onto one side of the pipe. This side gets welded onto the other side. And if you see, there's kind of like a little lip on here. And these two just lock together perfectly. And then this whole assembly fits inside the actual clamp, and that's what holds the pipes together. And it's a really tight, secure connection. No leaks. It's really the best way to go, in my opinion, as far as exhaust clamps go and making a connection for a flange. So the only downside to this setup is, as you can see, it does hang down a little bit lower than if I just had like the regular band clamp on there, or if I just welded the thing together. But at one point I did have this actually just welded together after I removed the clamp, the old band clamp. I welded the pipe, the header to the downpipe, and ran it like that for a while. But then when it came time where I had to change the clutch, obviously you have to remove it, so I didn't want to keep it that way forever. So I just cut them off, and then I welded these clamps on here. And overall they worked really well. I mean, the driver's side I haven't had a problem with because the header sits higher, but just because of the roads, and they were paving over here recently, so I sometimes hook it on driveways, or if there's like a high spot in the road, and over time it just starts leaking a little bit. But I mean, these things are cheap enough. I think it's like 20 bucks a clamp, and usually once a year, usually I have to swap the one out on this side. I mean, if they made a header that didn't hang this low, I would definitely swap over to it. I think the Hooker Black Hearts sit higher, but the only downside to that, you have to get like their special oil pan, their special trans-cross member. There's a bunch of stuff you got to change, which I don't want to replace right now. So for now, I'm just going to keep changing the V-band clamp and do it that way. So swapping this thing out is pretty simple. The actual flange part I'm not going to be using because this is actually welded to the pipe. The only part that actually gets damaged is the outside of this. It kind of gets like, it gets scraped and bent, and it kind of pulls off of the flange. So this is going to be the third time I'm replacing this since I did the swap. So I'm just going to leave this alone, don't need that, and I'm just going to go under there, unbolt this, slide the new one on, and see if the exhaust leak is gone. Alright, so we're in the air. And you could just see the difference in the flanges. You can see how it, just from scraping, it already has a cut like worn in it, and that's where it's leaking from. It's all squashed down. And you can see from the other side, it's pretty much perfect. It didn't scrape or nothing at all, because that header is actually tucked up between the transmission and the frame rail, which is how this header I wish was, because there is some space up there. But like I said, I think the only people who make that that actual tucked header is Hooker, because I actually called up Hawks asking if their headers sat any higher than these, and they said there's really no other spot to put the collector. So that's why I'm guessing you have to get a different oil pan to clear the tubes coming down, which is why Blackheart is the only one that makes that setup, as far as I know, because from the photos I could see it looks like the header is actually tucked in there. So I got to do a little more research on that. But if that is the case, definitely in the future, I'll swap out the oil pan. I'll swap out, I think you have to get different motor mounts too, because the motor might sit a little further back or a little further up to make the clearance for the header. And there's a different transmission cross member. So definitely something I want to do in the future. All right, so very simple to change. For the clamp I have, the nut is just a 1/2 inch. All right, so there's our clamp. And now with the clamp off, you can see what I mean here. How this is just a lip, and that just locks in like that. And then the clamp holds everything together. You can see how much has been leaking. And it's a little scrape down here. I don't think that's going to be a problem though. Just getting the new clamp on here should stop the leak. All right, so here's the old and the new. And like I said, you see where it wore through there and just started leaking. It's all bent and like flattened out, and then it started leaking through the bottom, and then the exhaust was just coming all the way around. And here's my new one. And this did look like this a year ago, so yeah, the road and scraping really does put a toll on these stupid things. But let's get the new one on. Alright, so I'm gonna put this so it's positioned how the other one was, where the bolt is like that, so that's not hanging down and causing any more unnecessary scraping. So I just goes over that like that. Now here's where it gets a little difficult, because the way this is been rubbing and it's kind of tweaked, so I gotta kind of put pressure to pull these two together. Okay. So after a good maybe 20 minutes of messing with this thing, I got it on. Problem I was running into was because this pipe is it's not perfectly lined up, you have to kind of pull it over a tiny bit and get it to lock into place. I had to hold that in place, keep that from popping out, get the clamp around it, keep the clamp together, and then get the washer on and the nut on all at the same time without keeping this pipe from coming out. So yeah, that was a complete, huge pain in the ass. It's on there, and let's tighten it down. And I'm happy with that. All right, so let's start it up and see if the leak is gone. All right, look at that. No more exhaust leak. No movement from the paper. Nice and quiet. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for this video. Stay tuned, because my next video coming out is going to be on the brakes. So I'm going to break everything down. I'm going to show you what I use to get these brakes on the car. I'll link all the parts, and I know I have a lot of guys asking about that. So that's going to be coming out next. So look out for that. So I'm trying to just get a few videos out before, you know, it starts snowing and I won't be able to get anything else done. So I figured, hey, any little repairs I'm doing, I might as well make videos on them, give you something to watch. Hey, maybe you'll learn something out of them. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.